Anthony tightens his tie as he drives through the brightly lit streets of downtown Chicago, his mind still turning over the intense conversations that linger from that evening's charity fundraiser. His sleek, black sedan moves quietly along. The smooth roads, but the calm exterior can't quite mask the memories he carries. Years growing up in South Side neighborhoods, where every day brought its own set of challenges, and people's eyes always carried unspoken judgment. All the success he has worked so hard for, graduating from top schools, building his career as a respected judge, being able to afford this very car, can't erase the scars or the subtle tension that creeps in with every turn. The city's energy hums around him, but for Anthony, every stoplight and street corner whispers back pieces of his past. He remembers walking home as a kid with his hoodie up, measuring every step, never really feeling safe under the watchful eyes of strangers. Being noticed was sometimes as dangerous as being invisible. Then, as he glances in the rearview mirror, the blue and red lights of a Chicago Police Department cruiser appear behind him, getting closer. Instantly, that old anxiety rises. His heartbeat kicks up. He inhales deeply, trying to stay calm, even as a familiar thought echoes in his mind. Tonight, the color of his skin might matter more than every degree, every courtroom victory, every good deed. The traffic light shifts to green, but the police cruiser doesn't move along. It stays right beside Anthony, almost as if daring him to make the next move. He's acutely aware of the officers watching him. He can feel it like a weight pressing on his shoulders. Their eyes seem to scan every inch of his car and every detail of his appearance, searching for some reason to intervene. When one of the officers suddenly gestures with sharp authority for Anthony to pull over, he does so with a sense of reluctant acceptance and a carefully practiced calm. He has learned, after years of keeping his composure, exactly how much his life can depend on how he handles these moments. As Anthony eases his car over to the shoulder, he keeps both hands in plain sight on the wheel. Every gesture is slow, open and intentional, a silent message that he wants no trouble and means nothing but respect. He knows bitterly well that here, his status as a judge, his education, and his community work are invisible, outshined by the assumptions made about him before a word is spoken. The silence around him is heavy, broken only by the distant wail of the siren, as if warning that the day's hopeful mood has been replaced in an instant. Now, instead of a routine drive home, Anthony finds himself navigating a tense, unpredictable moment where even careful actions could be misread, and the night has taken on a sense of risk he knows all too well. One of the officers, a tall man, with a hard expression, walks up to Anthony's window and taps on the glass with the tip of his flashlight. His voice is clipped and dismissive when he asks for license and registration, making his doubts obvious. Anthony, careful to keep his movements slow and his hands always visible, pulls out the documents and hands them over without a word. He manages to keep his expression calm, focusing on breathing steadily, but inside his nerves are on edge. The officer flips through the paperwork, staring at Anthony like he's waiting to find a mistake, something that could justify this stop. Then, without really looking up, the officer asks, "Is this your car?" The question is loaded, his tone making it clear he finds it hard to believe that Anthony, sitting there in his suit, could own a car this nice. Anthony answers politely and without a pause, keeping his voice even and steady, just like his father taught him all those years ago for moments like this. Still, his stomach twists at the implication behind the question, that he does not quite belong in this seat on this street at this time. Every reply feels like small proof of who he is, but it is also a test. The tension inches higher with each exchange, neither man backing down, the quiet between them growing heavier. Anthony knows how quickly misunderstandings can escalate, so he picks his words carefully, hoping that reason will be enough. The other officer, shorter and stockier, strolls over with hurried steps and a restless energy. He peers through Anthony's windshield and into the back seat, scanning every corner with obvious suspicion. Without so much as a greeting, he snaps, "Step out of the car, sir," his voice sharp and commanding, making it clear this is not a request. Anthony tries to keep his tone collected as he quietly asks why stepping out is necessary, but all he gets is a cold stare. It is clear the officers are not interested in explanations. Any hint of hesitation might be interpreted as a challenge or, worse, a threat. Resigned, Anthony draws a slow breath. He unbuckles his seatbelt and steps carefully out of the car, his hands always visible. He knows from experience how quickly patience can crumble in moments like this, and he is keenly aware of how little control he has. That creeping sense of powerlessness is crushing, a reminder that no matter how much he has achieved or how respectable he appears, he is still seen through a lens of distrust. Standing outside under streetlights, Anthony can almost predict every movement the officers make. Their body language screams suspicion, as if they expect trouble at any moment. He stands as calm as he can, knowing that in this situation, every gesture matters and that any wrong move, however innocent, could cost him far more than a few minutes of inconvenience. The familiarity of it all stings, but he stays steady, determined not to let their attitude break his resolve. Directed to place his hands on the hood, Anthony feels the sharp chill of the metal beneath his palms. Around him, traffic slows as people walk by, their eyes lingering. Some pause for a second and raise their phones, quietly recording the scene. The humiliation of being treated like a criminal right there in public on a well-lit Chicago street hits him hard. Still, Anthony focuses on keeping his back straight and his head level, refusing to show the shame or anger brewing inside. The taller officer frisks him, hands patting down every pocket and seam. It is a thorough search, almost as if they are hoping to find something, anything, that could match the story in their heads. Anthony stares at the hood, his mind drifting unwillingly to thoughts of his mother and his teenage son, picturing how devastated they would feel if they saw him like this, forced into such a powerless position for nothing but someone else's suspicion. His anger builds with each passing moment, pressing at the edges of his self-control. He wants to protest, to push back, to do anything other than wait, but he knows from a lifetime of experience that speaking out right now could make things far worse. He bites down on his words, holding tight to the hope that if he stays calm, this ordeal will end without real harm. The questions start coming in sharp, sarcastic tones. One officer asks Anthony how someone like him could afford such a nice car, his words dripping with disbelief. Anthony keeps his voice firm as he says he has worked hard his whole life, but the insult cuts deep. He feels a mix of shame and anger, his hands still pressed to the cold hood, wishing for all this to be over, but knowing he cannot let his frustration show. It is not the first time someone has doubted his story or his right to be proud of what he has built, but having to defend his achievements in public like this is especially painful. After a moment, the stockier officer chuckles and suggests that Anthony's job can't really be on the level, taunting him about the way he stands and speaks, like he's pretending to be someone he's not. Anthony lifts his head, meeting both of their eyes, letting some of that old hurt and anger flicker across his face. He fights the urge to let anger take over. Instead, he clings to his discipline, unwilling to rise to the bait or give them a reason to escalate things further. He knows painfully well that dignity is sometimes all he has left to stand on. Out of nowhere, the restless officer grabs a pair of handcuffs and snaps them onto Anthony's wrists. The cold metal tightens, digging in, and the clink of the cuffs is loud in the quiet street. For Anthony, that sound is heavier than ever. It's like every battle he's fought in court, every argument he's made for fairness and respect, gets slammed shut in this moment. He wants to shout about the injustice, but he makes himself stand tall, forcing his face to stay calm. People continue to drive or walk past, sparing only quick looks. Some frown in disapproval, others barely seem to notice, like seeing a black man cuffed in downtown Chicago is just another thing in their day. Anthony has been the voice for others in these situations, sitting on the bench and hearing cases where someone's life got turned upside down because nobody questioned this kind of treatment. Now, as anger surges in him, he suddenly sees how easy it is to become just one more story. The sting of betrayal from the system aches deep inside him, but Anthony squares his shoulders, determined not to let these officers see him break. He will not show shame for something he did not do. Anthony is shoved toward the patrol car, the officer's hands rough on his arms like he might bolt at any second. Their grip is harsh, leaving his shoulders aching, and the way they handle him makes it clear they think he's a real threat. When they push him into the back seat, the heavy door slams shut, cutting him off from the world. The murky plastic divider, the faint smell of stale coffee and disinfectant, the muffled sounds. From outside, suddenly it all feels unreal. The impatient officer tells him they are taking him down to the station, tossing out a comment that maybe there he will suddenly remember how he ended up with a car like that. His stomach churns at the insinuation, but he keeps his mouth shut. In the cramped back seat, Anthony closes his eyes. He fights the urge to blurt out the truth, to tell them who he really is, a well-known judge who has dedicated his life to upholding the law. In Chicago, it would be easy to demand a phone call, to insist they look up his record, but he cannot bring himself to say it. He knows this is bigger than himself. If he escapes just by pulling rank, all those people he has seen in similar spots who never had that option will never be heard. Today, he decides, his silence will speak for them. The ride to the station stretches out in silence, but the tension inside the squad car hangs thick in the air. Anthony leans his forehead against the cool window, watching familiar Chicago blocks slide by as if they belong to someone else. The city buzzes with energy outside, but here, in the back seat, time seems to drag. His cuffed hands rest in his lap, the metal digging into his skin with every bump in the road, and every minute seems to last forever. The officer driving keeps glancing at Anthony through the rearview mirror as if expecting him to break down or start pleading. Anthony stares back, unreadable, refusing to give them any kind of satisfaction. The other cop, the one who cuffed him, sits in the passenger seat mumbling ugly comments under his breath, little remarks about people who think they're above the rules, or how some folks always find trouble. Each word drives home how deep the divide is between him and these men in blue, who are supposed to protect citizens just like him. No one speaks openly. The only sounds are the hum of traffic and the occasional crackle of the police radio. Despite all his years here, for the first time Anthony feels like a stranger in his own city. Powerless and alone, he tries to quiet his mind, waiting to see just how far this night will go. Arriving at the precinct, Anthony is yanked from the squad car with the same roughness as before. The building, usually filled with noise and activity, during the day feels almost deserted at night. A couple of other men in handcuffs sit slumped on benches, waiting for their own long nights to play out, but otherwise the lobby is quiet. The fluorescent lights give everything a washed-out look, and the echo of heavy boots bounces off the tile floors. Anthony is steered down the hall and pushed into a windowless interrogation room. The small space is stark, grey walls, a battered metal chair, a table with scratch marks from years of nervous hands. The cold, hard seat is uncomfortable and Anthony's back aches, but he keeps his head up when the officer follows him in. The cop stands across the table, arms crossed and mouth set, sizing Anthony up like he is looking for any sign of weakness. He starts in right away, voice low but sharp, dropping hints that things could get a lot worse if Anthony does not start cooperating soon. Every question is loaded, laced with an edge. But no matter what the officer throws at him, Anthony meets the stare with steady eyes, letting the silence answer where words would only add fuel. The officer leans in, trying to get under Anthony's skin, tossing out digs that maybe Anthony thinks he is too good for consequences, that people like him act untouchable when the system finally catches up. Each word is meant to chip away at Anthony's composure, the snide tone making it clear the cop expects some sort of outburst or apology. But Anthony stays calm, watching the officer with the quiet confidence he's developed over years on the bench. He answers in an even voice, telling the officer that the truth of the situation is plain as day, whether or not anyone is willing to actually see it. That quiet, unflinching strength sits heavy in the tiny room, taking the sting out of the threats. Something shifts. For the first time, the officer falters. He draws back, frowning, maybe realizing that Anthony is not the person he first assumed, or that the anger he keeps stoking never really finds a spark. The balance in the room feels different now. Anthony's steady gaze makes the cop question if he has pushed this too far, if maybe this situation is not as simple as he wanted to believe. The tension lingers, but now the officer's confidence is clearly not what it was just minutes earlier. Anthony decides he has had enough. There is no more waiting in silence. With a clear, steady tone that brooks no argument, he demands his phone. The cop across the table looks caught off guard by Anthony's sudden firmness, and after hesitating, tosses the phone onto the scratched metal table with a mocking snort. He mutters something about how a call will not change anything. Tonight, like this is just another desperate move he has seen before. But Anthony ignores the taunts. His hands are clumsy in the cuffs, but he manages to punch in the number. He keeps his gaze locked on the officer, showing no sign of nerves, only quiet resolve. When the line picks up, he says only a few words, his voice calm, controlled, giving just enough information. Whoever is on the other end understands immediately, and the call ends in less than a minute. The air in the room changes, though nothing is said aloud. The cop goes quieter, not sure what just shifted. He straightens his back, glancing at the door like he is waiting for someone to tell him what happens next. Even the bravado in his voice fades. For the first time, the possibility that this night may not go as planned becomes hard to ignore. The next few minutes crawl by in a thick, nervous silence. Anthony keeps his eyes forward, his breathing steady, while the officer shifts restlessly in his chair, glancing now and then at the door. It is as if both of them feel that something big is about to break the calm. Suddenly, the hush is shattered by a rush of noise, doors swinging open, quick footsteps echoing down the hall. Into the precinct lobby strides a man wearing a dark suit, his face set with clear authority. And behind him march two higher-ranking officers whose uniforms are crisp and whose badges catch the harsh lights overhead. The officer who had been grilling Anthony stands so fast, his chair almost tips over. His skin goes pale when he realizes exactly who just arrived. In a voice sharper than anything spoken so far tonight, the man in the suit demands to know what is going on, and if anyone there understands exactly who sits in that interrogation room, shackled and silent. The mood in the room turns upside down in a second. That cop who was so sure of himself only moments ago now looks like he would rather be anywhere else. Finally, Anthony's full name, Judge Anthony Williams, is said out loud in front of everyone. The truth pounds through the station like a shockwave, and suddenly the night looks nothing like it did just minutes ago. The realization that Anthony is one of the country's most respected judges freezes everyone in the room. It's as if time stops for a few seconds. The officer who had been so cocky just moments before now stands rooted to the spot, stammering for some sort of excuse, clearly struggling to process the scale of his mistake. His eyes dart around the room, searching for help, but nobody comes. To his rescue, the man in the suit, obviously in charge, doesn't bother to hide how angry he is. His voice is sharp and direct as he lays out how unacceptable the officer's actions have been, making it clear there will be consequences, serious ones. Anthony stands up slowly, the clatter of the metal chair pulling everyone's attention. He still wears his dignity like a shield, showing no signs of anger, only a cool, calm respect for himself that can't be shaken by what just happened. The whole room seems to hold its breath as he looks around. The cops who had tried to break him earlier now look away, ashamed, shrinking back as the weight of their actions settles on them. The silence presses down heavier than before, thick with regret and the raw embarrassment of those who have just been exposed in front of their peers. One of the senior officers steps forward and carefully unlocks the handcuffs from Anthony's wrists, doing his best to not make things worse. As the cold metal comes off, Anthony rolls his shoulders and stands tall, regaining his usual presence right there in front of everyone. He looks right at the officers who just hours ago tried to tear him down and speaks without raising his voice. But every word seems to hit even harder because of it. He tells them straight that they do not know him, not really, and they certainly do not know what real justice means. His words ring out in the room, carrying the kind of weight that comes from someone who has actually lived those ideals. For a moment, nobody moves. The officers who were bragging and mocking him earlier look small now, stuck in place as the embarrassment of the moment settles in. Anthony can feel the shift. It is clear he has his freedom back, but it does not feel like the end of the road. If anything, it feels like the start of something bigger, a fight that needs to be had. The whole truth is finally out in the open, and Anthony knows that telling it is now his greatest strength. Over the next few days, Anthony finds himself right in the middle of a media firestorm. He spends long hours in his study at home, replaying every detail in his head, from the rough way the officers first approached him all the way to the shock on their faces when they finally learned his real identity. Papers pile up on his desk, and the phone barely stops ringing as reporters, colleagues, and even old friends reach out, trying to get his side of the story. His experience spreads quickly, turning into headline news and sparking intense arguments that take over both television and online spaces across the country. He watches as people everywhere start to talk about what happened, with some in disbelief and others angry that things like this still go on. Over and over, Anthony hears his story described as more than just bad luck. It becomes an example of a much bigger issue. Reporters keep showing up at his door, while lawyers and community leaders call to ask for his help in shining a light on the deeper problems of institutional racism. It is a lot to take in, and the responsibility weighs on him. Still, with each passing conversation, Anthony feels his resolve strengthen. He knows now that what started in that cold police station is forcing real questions, and he is ready to help lead that change. Anthony realizes that, with everything that has happened, he could easily demand that those officers face immediate punishment. Maybe get them suspended or even fired. Maybe start some kind of lawsuit that would drag their names into court. But as he sits and thinks through it all, he starts to see that this kind of payback would only be the ending to his own story. It would not touch the bigger, deeper problem that made something like this possible in the first place. The rot in the system goes way beyond a handful of people, and Anthony knows that rooting it out will take more than just taking down a few names. Deciding to fight for structural change is not easy, though. It means walking away from quick wins and the satisfaction of seeing someone pay for what was done to him. What he wants now is bigger, to change things for all those whose stories will never make the news. Anthony can feel the responsibility settle on his shoulders. He's not just speaking for himself anymore, but for thousands of others who have never been given a chance to be heard. He steels himself for the road ahead. It will be long and it will be hard. But Anthony is determined his story will not become just another statistic, buried and forgotten. Anna, Anthony's assistant, steps quietly into his office and lets him know that everything is set for the press conference. Taking a slow breath, Anthony stands up and straightens his suit jacket, calming his nerves even as his mind keeps spinning. He walks through the familiar halls of the Chicago courthouse, where every face he passes seems to turn his way. It is a strange reversal. He used to walk these corridors as Judge Anthony Williams, the one who held authority and made important decisions. But things are different now. Today, he is simply a man who was wronged, carrying a story that does not belong only to him. As Anthony pushes open the doors to the main courtroom, a wave of noise greets him. Reporters fill the room, microphones pointed in his direction, cameras flashing and rolling. The energy in the air is thick, charged with anticipation. For a split second, Anthony feels the weight of what is about to happen. He knows that whatever he says next will spread far beyond this old courthouse, maybe even across the country. He glances at Anna for reassurance, then steps up to the podium. Now, it is not just about bravery, it is about turning that courage into the kind of change everyone in the room is hoping for. Standing behind the podium, Anthony lets himself take in the crowd for a moment before speaking. When he finally starts, his voice is steady and clear, reaching every corner of the courtroom. He shares, in simple, honest words, what happened to him that day, the way he was stopped, questioned, and treated just because of how he looked. He tells the press that the really worrying part is not his own story, but how this kind of thing happens to thousands of people across America all the time, people who never get the chance to be heard. The room grows quiet as he paints a picture of the daily reality faced by so many, the silence deepening as folks realize just how common this is. Anthony stresses that he is not there to make an example out of a few officers. Instead, he says, the real goal is to fix what is broken in the whole system. His tone is direct and honest. He does not dodge the hard truth that racism is built into the structures meant to protect everyone. Anthony promises to use every bit of his experience, his job, and his reach to push for meaningful reforms, and he calls on everyone watching and listening to stand beside him in this fight. When Anthony finishes speaking, the whole courtroom sits in silence for a few long moments. It is as if nobody wants to be the first to move or make a sound. Then, one by one, people start to clap, a gentle applause that quickly turns into something more powerful and heartfelt. The journalists, usually eager to chase controversy, seem honestly moved by the truth and conviction Anthony laid bare. For once, this is not just another headline to be picked apart on talk shows or online feeds. His words have struck a deeper chord, making many see the real people behind those statistics they report every day. Anthony looks out over the crowd and realizes that what happened today is about more than his own experience. He did not just share a personal story, he sparked something bigger, a sense that real change is possible if enough people stand up. The echoes of his message linger, growing stronger as it spreads from the courtroom to homes and communities. All across the country, Anthony feels hope rising, not only in himself but in everyone listening, and maybe even in those who have never spoken out before. The path ahead might still be uncertain, but now there is a sense that nobody has to walk it alone.